Well, so I figured I'd finally get around to talking about why I left New York City. Um, I was there from 2007 to 2024. I figured I'd give the positives and kind of the negatives. Obviously, the negatives are why I left. Um, but I'll start on the positive side, right? Like, I moved there at a very interesting time when the city was like kind of fully coming out of 9/11. There was a ton of new businesses and tech and all this stuff kind of happening within New York City, but it also still maintained a lot of its kind of pre 2000s, like 80s and 90s kind of vibes. In like if you went to places in like the East Village and Lower East Side, Soho, Tribeca, like the West Village. I mean, all they still had a ton of places that were still kind of holdovers from these long-term leases, um, that were places that I would kind of look at as OG kind of New York City places. Um, the nightlife there, I think, is second to none. I think it has a lot to do with the number of people that are in New York City. It's hard to fail. Like you have to work hard to fail at a business there. I think most of the places that go out of business, or at least the fun places, especially entertainment spots, are usually because of um, people that own the business stealing money, not paying employees, things of that nature. But it's not for a lack of actually having people come into the business to spend money, and to partake on whatever that business is offering. But the nightlife there is great, right? Like I got to see the rise of Williamsburg waterfront, and Greenpoint areas that were when I first moved there were basically like warehouse districts, right? Um, the music scene that blew up in Williamsburg was amazing for a very finite window before all of these high end hotels moved in, and kind of created and amplified the rooftop culture in New York City. But even that, I mean, I won't say that going to a rooftop in New York City isn't a great thing. Like, you don't want to be typically on the street level during the summer. You got to deal with homeless people. It's hot. It's muggy. It's gross. You go to a rooftop. You're getting a breeze. You're kind of looking at this kind of vast landscape, which is beautiful. I'm not gonna lie. Like the New York City landscape, like getting on a rooftop and looking out is is one of the most calming things, at least for me, and many other people that would go. Right. I will say it is bougie and all of those things, but it is great. And the other thing is the music scene was, and still is for the most part, like phenomenal there. No matter what you wanted on any given night, you could find, whether it was metal, punk rock, EDM, hip hop, top 40s. Like there was a place for whatever mood that you're in. Like you could, literally find anything. You want to go to a low key wine bar that may not have a lot of people in it. You just want to go have a couple drinks of wine, maybe read a book. You can do that. Or you can go to the wine bar that's packed full of people offering specials. It's like elbow to elbow, and you can barely hear the people around you talking because it's so loud in there. But the vibe is just great, and you really enjoy it. Um, I one of the interesting things is I'm a huge I would say movie person. Both music and movies, that's my thing. Like I really enjoy that. So if I can go out, listen to live music, love doing that. If I can go watch a great movie, I love doing that. And during the span up until I would say COVID, um, I was at the movies just about every single weekend. Um, and the one thing that New York City has that most other places do not is a real IMAX theater that can shoot 70 millimeter. Like There's only like I think 30 or 31 of those theaters across the US. By the way, if you're not going to an IMAX that can shoot 70 millimeter, do not waste your money. There is no difference. Just go to the Dolby Premium Experience or whatever AMC or Regal or whatever theater, like the premium experience that those other theaters have. Do that. IMAX is a branding gimmick for the most part, except for the theaters that can shoot 70 millimeter. Like getting to see, I mean, movies as they were intended, like absolutely amazing. And we had that at the AMC in Lincoln Center, like absolutely phenomenal. Um, but I think that, the other thing was friends. Like I had a great group of friends, right? We were relatively like, it was actually my group of friends consisted of like, I think three separate groups. It was like the people that I met when I first came to the city, and then people that I met a little bit later, and then the people that I met over COVID. All great people, all of them overlap and are friends with each other. I mean, it's great, and I can't say enough about the friends that I had in New York City and still have. I still keep in contact with them, you know, through various means, which is either visiting New York City or having them come down here to North Carolina, or keep in contact with them through group chats and things like that. Like they're a great group of people. And my friend group spans a whole host of political ideology, from what I would consider like more farther right leaning to like full on socialists on the other side. Like you get everything in between. And all of us got along. None of us talk about politics necessarily. Like it's not something that I think friends do generally, unless all of your friends are of one political party. I find this actually with more left leaning folks, especially the women that I knew that had friends outside of the friend group. All of their friends were liberal, and all they would talk about would be how much they hated Republicans, or they thought Republicans were racist, or this, that, and the other. But in the group, nobody talks about that stuff. We talk about music, we talk about movies, we talk about like stuff that's going on in the city, like fun events and things like we're not caught up in politics, which was great. But I do miss my friends there. Not to say that I don't have great friends down here. One of the reasons I moved down to North Carolina, specifically the area that I did, is because one of my best friends from before I moved to New York City lives down here, and I had visited a couple times, and it's a great area. But on the negatives, right? Like there's a lot of negatives, and I think had it not been for COVID, I probably would still be in New York City, um, because a lot of the very few positives outweighed at the time all the negatives, or at least created a blinder effect to all of the negatives. Like if you take a random person from the suburbs that's never been in New York City and you plop them in New York City, and they stay there for a weekend, they will list out every single negative and only have a negative experience. Generally speaking, they're going to see homeless, they're going to see trash, they're going to, if they go in the summer, they're going to smell sour milk on every corner. They're definitely they're going to see crazy people on the subway. They're probably going to witness a crime while they're there. They're going to comment about how when they went into a CVS or multiple CVSs or Rite Aids, or it's CVSs now, like everything was behind plastic. Like they're going to see all that stuff. They're going to go out to a restaurant and complain about how expensive it is. And it's going to be some chain restaurant, by the way, not even like a restaurant in a good area that's a one of a kind restaurant, which is overpriced, very expensive. They're going to talk about how they went to stay at a hotel and it was insanely expensive. They're going to talk about how, you know, the museums aren't free. If you're from DC, you get it. Like, they're going to list out all the negative things, right? And if you're someone that lives in the city, you deal with it all the time, you're like, yeah, but, yeah, but. And I did that for a very long time, again, until COVID. I mean, like, again, politics weren't really in your face until COVID. I mean, there was the changeover from Bloomberg to, um, now I'm forgetting his name, uh, but the next mayor that we had, that was before Adams. Um, I'm sure I'll remember his name while I'm talking about this. But at any rate, um, this particular mayor came from Brooklyn, and he came from, I guess, a lower income section of Brooklyn, right? But at any rate, the point I'm getting to is that there was a lot of talk on the campaign trail, I remember, about how he was going to prioritize, the outer boroughs, and he absolutely hated and despised the wealthy people in the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side. Well, the first snowstorm that we had, which when he was mayor when he first came in, we had like snowstorms literally every single, not even a storm, but like 1 to 2 inches. We had like one storm, and then a subsequent week it snowed 2 inches. Another week it snowed 2 inches, and then it would snow like an inch twice in one week. And so I had a car in the city. I drove everywhere. I lived on the Upper East Side, um, and so I would drive, and I'm like, man, these streets are absolute trash. Like, I don't understand why they're not cleaning the streets. And I would drive, usually down Park Avenue. Um, and then when you would get to 59th Street, in Park Ave, and you could see it right across, um, it would be clear. Like, there was no snow on the side streets. There was no snow, on the southbound, or the south side of 59th Street, I should say, on Park Avenue. And that was literally, you could draw a line, across 59th, across all of Manhattan, and it was the case, um, which I found interesting. And I was like, this can't be, maybe it's just in my head. Like, maybe it's just in my head. And then I would drive to Williamsburg, streets are clear. Drive across the bridge to get there, all the bridge is clear. Lower East Side, Eastville, all these places are clear. And then every subsequent snowstorm, the same thing would happen. And it was kind of just a running joke. I'm like, oh, the roads look bad, but once we get past 59th Street, it'll be fine. And lo and behold, every single time, it was that way. Um, but then there was the decriminalization of two things, of weed, and public urination and defecation. And so you would be walking around places, and then you would see pee everywhere. When you would get to Midtown, um, more predominantly on the subway or in the subway area, there would be human feces, um, in the subway. It's like, again, you get used to this stuff. You're like, oh, it's just kind of like whatever. It's like having the poop app in San Francisco. Like, the people that live there know, they think it's funny that there's like poop everywhere. They know it's human poop, but you just get used to it. It's just living in San Francisco, or it's just living in New York City. Um, but kind of just to fast track to some other things I just found annoying, after the Trump won in 2016. Like, it was the quietest subway ride I've ever taken in my life, to work that day. People were crying in the subway. Um, people were, um, you know, people were just silent. You get the office, they were silent. And then people were vocally talking about politics in a way that I had never experienced before. Um, and it was from that point forward that politics just became something that was okay to talk about if you were on the right or on the left, I should say. If you were on the right, you voted for Trump, keep your mouth shut. Because like these people were like emotionally affected by the outcome of that election. I was working for a, let's just say a martech marketing technology company that focused on. I won't go to the details, but um, politics was so prevalent in the office um, that one of my colleagues, so there was a bunch of different companies that we worked for or that we worked with on the partner side, and so the goal was to get different organizations to leverage our technology as part of their broader technology stack. Um, and it was okay for this person who ultimately got promoted to say, we had an inbound, um, we deal a lot with media or organizations, right? And most people don't know this, but like only a handful of companies own all of the radio stations and kind of all of the broadcast across the US. It's like a handful of companies. And so typically, like you want to work with them. You want to work with Scripps. You're going to see Scripps organizations advertising during political season, which which we had a lot of, and which is a moneymaker by the way for every advertising agency. You would see left wing politicians, right wing politicians. You just see the gambit of these campaigns that they're running within their local area, right, their local region. But at any rate, we had one of those large media companies wanting to work with us. It was Sinclair Media. And again, politics, if you're on the left, and I can speak specifically in New York City, was okay to be talked about openly to the point where this particular individual out loud in front of an entire office of people said that he didn't want to work with Sinclair Media because he didn't agree with their politics. He was like, I hate conservatives. And all they do is push conservative BS. And I'm like, well, yes and no. But I raised my hand. I'm like, I don't care. Like, these companies bring in money. My goal is to get them to implement our technology as part of their stack. Like, if you don't want to make money, maybe you're in the wrong role. But that person got promoted. I moved out of the ad tech and martech space, thank God. But it was just interesting because that was just a small kind of snippet. I mean, we had a lot of offices have TVs in the break rooms, and the TVs would just be on CNN or on MSNBC, just on rotation. And people would go in and just say, F Trump out loud or this, that, and the other. They had the Brett Kavanaugh like confirmation hearing, like the whole thing with all the accusers and all that stuff. Like that was just playing in the office, and people were like losing their mind. I would just walk in and just kind of like get my water or get whatever, kind of at any rate, and just kind of move on. But later, once COVID happened, it kind of took the veil off of New York City. And it was in a lot of different ways that for me I could never come back from. I felt like after seeing all this stuff, and I'll kind of get into it, like I would be a hypocrite to continue to live in New York City. Um, you know, the policies that were rolled out under COVID were, I think, describing it nicely, authoritarian. Um, you know, New York State said that businesses had to close. They determined which businesses were important and which businesses weren't. Which they determined that Amazon was important, but the mom and pop shops, they weren't important and they were screwed. Um, so they forced all these businesses to close, and at the same time, didn't push back property taxes or any of this stuff, or even give them any kind of relief whatsoever. So all of these businesses had to close. They were forced to close. And then this the all of the other ancillary kind of stuff around those businesses still needed to get their money. So it was just kind of this weird thing where they were they were restricting their ability to make money, and then also requiring that they still pay money. And then they slowly started to roll out these ridiculous, um, like just absolutely absurd policies, which was 6 feet of distance. So when they did allow businesses to open, they could only, like, if you're a restaurant or a bar, they can only serve drinks to go, which was actually kind of nice. But everybody had to stand 6 feet apart. So everywhere you go, there were these stupid six like stickers that people, and then it was like, so there was like that, which was interesting. So businesses were trying to make the most of it and trying to do things to make people feel more comfortable and have more fun and stick around outside the business, although there were no ability to go to the bathroom inside at all. And then people that lived close to the businesses started to complain that people were outside, so they called the police, and the police would come and then force all the people away from the businesses, because they weren't. Once you got your drink and you're out of line, people were in groups of more than six, or more than four, I think, or whatever, and they were too close to other groups, so they had to. Anyways, these rules were ridiculous. The other one was, since all the businesses shut down, a bunch of people weren't making money. And so then on the other side, they then removed all of the um, landlord kind of ability to evict people for not paying rent. And so then you had all these landlords who weren't getting money, couldn't evict tenants, um, still were on the hook, by the way, for all of the stuff that was being used: the electricity in the building, the water in the building, the um, the taxes, the property taxes that had to be due. And so I personally know quite a few people that just did not pay rent uh, for almost 2 years. And at the end of COVID, or at the end of COVID, I'm going to use these terms loosely, they started to reinforce the eviction. They lifted the eviction moratorium. And then the people that I knew went on and found other apartments in the city and then proceeded to pay rent. It was the most absurd thing ever. So you had like small businesses that weren't getting money and were being forced to not only like forced to conform with the state and local regulations. You have the same thing for landlords, which is a business in itself. These are a lot of the buildings in New York City are owned by people that saved up a long period of time to be able to afford to buy a building decades ago, and they've just been renting out that building, um, and fixing up and doing all the things, um, and they were all screwed, and they were all screwed. Um, it was very interesting from that perspective, and then as just a person that was going on experiencing it, you had to wear your mask everywhere. Businesses, you couldn't go inside, but then they created fully enclosed structures with air conditioning outside that you could then sit in, but you couldn't sit inside, but you could sit outside inside with other people, made 0 sense, and everybody in New York City knows exactly what I'm talking about. These were fully contained and enclosed structures that operated exactly the same way as going inside of a restaurant. Um, you had to wear your mask to sit at a table, but once you got to the table, you could take your mask off. Um, Not to say that I'm advocating for mask usage. Everybody was wearing cloth masks. Very few people were wearing N95 masks, and that was mainly because we couldn't get any in the city. And even if we did, I wouldn't have worn one anyways because it was absurd on its face. The 6 feet rules, the wearing the mask at the table, but not when you're sitting down, and you have to put your mask on when you get up from the table to go to the bathroom, and they put plastic barriers between people sitting at bars. Like, the whole thing was absolutely ridiculous. Then on top of it, when everything opened back up, they maintained strict rules on how many people you could have inside of a business. So I would go to like I go to football Sunday. I'm a Washington Redskins fan, aka the Commanders. Um, and there was a bar I'd go to on the Upper East Side. I won't say the name, but I would go to that bar, and every single Sunday there would be someone that was in the community that was their purpose was to walk around to businesses to make sure that they had all the right credentials on the outside of the business in regard to COVID policy, and they would count the people inside to make sure that the businesses were conforming to um, the uh, the the maximum persons that were available or that were allowable. It was absolutely absurd, absolutely absurd. Um, but to the point, when you stripped away all the music, you stripped away all of the bar scene and the nightlife and all of that stuff, you're there paying crazy amounts for rent. You're paying crazy amounts of your salary to taxes in New York City. I was paying like 13.5% between, I think it was like, it might have been 14 to 15 actually, of my salary on top of federal. So roughly about like 42% of my paycheck was going to taxes. Um, you start to realize, like, what am I actually paying for here? Like, if all of this stuff isn't available, like, why am I putting myself through this? Right? That veil kind of lifted, and I became the people that were, coming into the city, the tourists coming into the city, and kind of just judging it. I became that person, and everybody else in New York City, by the way, became that person, which is why there's been such a mass exodus out of New York City. Um, then coming out of COVID, there was immigration issues, and you know, it's hard to explain like how impactful that was. Um, and how interesting, like, where you live determined on where you lived and where you went out at night or during the day determined on if you saw it or not. And so I happen to frequent the East Village, specifically 7th Street and Avenue A. And on the other side of that park there was an intake facility for arrivals for that were coming off of the mass number of buses that were constantly coming into New York City. And so I saw that on a regular basis, and I saw all of those people just hanging out in the park, like no work whatsoever, and essentially just kind of scheming on ways to rob people. So there was like that. My parking garage was on 102nd Street in FDR, in Spanish Harlem. It overlooked uh, Randall Island, and so my parking garage was on the top. I was on the top of the deck, so like I would get out of my car and look out over the over the East River, and then see these massive encampments on the other side. Not only that, but the way to get there was 102nd Street, because the pedestrian bridge was literally right off of that to go into Randall's Island. So all of these people were crossing over. Um, so I saw these people crossing over constantly. At any rate, it became, it was just, it just added to this feeling in the city at the time, with crime increasing, um, that like you also had this mass number of people that were in New York City that at some point were gonna like be deported, right? And it was mostly men, very few women, mostly men. And I kind of see the writing on the wall. I'm like, oh, I'm like, if Trump wins the election, mass deportations are going to happen. These people are going to riot. It's not going to be pretty. Probably need to start looking to get out of the city. So we got the taxes, we got the ridiculous extreme policies that were put in place in the name of COVID. We had like this immigration issue. And so on a personal note, um, there was an incident where I was at a grocery store with my girlfriend, and usually we're always in the same aisle together. We're looking at the same stuff, um, and and we're just kind of shopping together. And this one particular time, she happened to walk a couple of steps ahead of me around a corner, in this particular grocery store, which is on the corner of 96 and Park Avenue. Um, and I hear my name, and I could just tell by the tone, like it was just kind of off. So I walk around the corner, and my girlfriend has this African immigrant like in her face, and I see it, and immediately I'm like, I'm like, this guy is like, he's making my girlfriend feel uncomfortable. He was apparently trying to get her to buy him an Uber ride to the aforementioned Randall Island, so that he could get back before curfew. But he was like in her face, and I could tell, like, if I hadn't have been there, he probably would have assaulted her. Um, and so it was at that moment I was like, all right, I had to like shoo this guy away. Um, but it was at that moment I was like, the crime on the subway is massive. We had like the Daniel Penny incident, where if you were just doing the right thing, you might go to jail. But if you've ridden the subway, you've definitely seen assaults on there, and they were increasing rapidly. Um, Coming out of COVID and during COVID, and then coming out of COVID, like it was ridiculous. Like it was ridiculous, and it was at that point I was like, I can't. Like I was working remotely. My girlfriend had to travel into the office downtown. I'm like, I can't be there to protect her if something happens, right? I'm like, all right, got this BS with the politics that's happening everywhere. We've got authoritarian COVID policies, and if something were to happen like that again, like I don't want to live under that kind of control. We had mass immigration, which is not the good kind of immigration, into New York City, uh, leading to this rise in crime and violence, especially with Venezuelan gang members. Um, we had at the same time also this kind of like lax approach to policing. Um, and then we had like these high taxes, and I'm like, it's time to go. It's time to go. It's definitely time to go. Um, I miss my friends. I miss the nightlife. I miss the music. I miss that AMC. Um, but I do not miss all of the negatives of New York City. And due to all of those negatives, that is why I'm here in North Carolina today. But at any rate, let me know what you think about this. Like, share, and keep believing the best for America is ahead. Bye.